Students, this is one of my favorite writing exercises because using fragments and questions will really help convey personality, will really help jazz it up, spice it up, bring it to life. On the back side here, this page, the topic is going to be a time you did something for the first time. Like for example, I prepared a dinner party for the first time and tried to make quiche. And so we're going to take a look at how cool fragments are, how cool questions are, have you try some, and then put it all together and actually tell a story using integrating fragments and questions. Okay, just keep in mind right now that the topic is going to be a first for you. First time driving, first time on a date, first time skiing or something like that. So let's take a look first at sentence fragments, okay? As you look through these, I like this little exercise because it shows you what the sentence might be like, or what the phrase might be like if you had absolutely complete sentences. This one's kind of stomach turning. It's dramatic though. Full sentences, I drew back on the syringe. There was nothing in the needle. There was absolutely nothing. Well, that's horrific. Yikes. But look how much more dramatic it is if you read something like this. I drew back on the syringe. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Okay? Why do we need all that there was nothing in the needle, there was absolutely nothing, when we could just get away with nothing, absolutely nothing? And it's a lot more dramatic, a lot more intense, right? So a fragment is anything that's not a complete sentence. But notice how it can be just simply one word. How cool is that? In fact, some of the most dramatic, coolest, poetic things I can think of are just these one-word little mini sentences. Nothing, period. It's cool, huh? Okay, now, I'm going to have you down here write down 4 things that I help you come up with about why fragments are so cool, okay? And I'm not going to write them down myself, so I make you watch the video. But for this first one, I want you to write down dramatic. They add drama. They're intense. Number 1 down. Look how long and wordy this is. The wounds from that time of my life are completely healed. Well, perhaps they are healed. Maybe they are not so much healed. The wounds from that time of my life are completely healed. Well, perhaps, or maybe not so much. That's better, isn't it? It's much better. And you know what I like about that one? For number 2 down here, I want you to write down this word, conversational. Fragments help mimic the way we actually talk. And when we talk, we're a lot more interesting sometimes in our use of fragments, or maybe not. That's suggestive, that's interesting. Conversational style, which means you can communicate more of your personality. This one's fun. It's awkward, incomplete sentences. They weren't as friendly as they used to be. Why weren't they as friendly? They weren't as friendly because now I was poor and they couldn't get freebies from me. Overly wordy and weird. They weren't as friendly as they used to be. Why? Very conversational. No more lunches on me. No more trips to the amusement park. I'll charge my dad's credit card. I love that repetition of no more lunches on me, no more trips to... You can get this nice rhythmic repetition going, even though it's just sentence fragments. Is that anything new? Why don't you come down here, and for the next thing I want to talk about is just have it put, there's a couple we could talk about here. How about, I guess what I'm thinking about right at the moment is impact. How about emphasis? Let's do emphasis, okay? Emphasis. So far you should have, they're dramatic, they're conversational, they add emphasis. And I think for number 4, why don't you just put compact? In other words, hey, they're short. You can get a lot of information out very quickly because of the very tight, compact style. It's in literary circles we call it a telegraphic style. You say as much as you can with as few words as you can. Here's another example. Paulette raced up the stairs panting. She was afraid she was too late. She was afraid of what she'd find. She was simply afraid. Heck, she was terrified. Paulette raced up the stairs panting, afraid she was too late, afraid of what she'd find. Look at that nice, fragment repetition. We have that rhetorical thing going on called anaphora, repetition of grammatical structure. 2-word phrase, simply afraid. And then back to a full sentence, heck, she was terrified. It's nice. Again, it's got the drama, it's got the emphasis, and it's got that compact sort of intensity from it. I'm going to add one more, a 5th thing down here, and I'll actually write this one out. You can use fragments a lot to be impressionistic. Like, let's say you were describing the room around you right now. You could just make a list of things that are there. Bed, blanket, or a little more descriptive. Blank wall. Let's see, what am I looking at here? Many books, empty desks, brown door. And just by that list, I'm giving you a very impressionistic overview of some of the concrete details in my particular world. So what I usually have the students do is to think about that time they did something for the first time and try and think of the concrete details in that scene and just make a list of little fragments to give the impressions. White, snow, cold, long things on feet, alone, afraid. Okay, make a list of some fragments. And then we underestimate the use of questions because we don't use them in our formal writing. But in personal expressive writing and storytelling writing, questions are amazing. We think in questions, so it helps us become, our characters become relatable. Questions are set up to get answers, so it's almost like foreshadowing. You're setting up a situation. This is a funny little story right here that I'm afraid it doesn't end, but it's got normal sentences in it and then these 6 questions, and I want you to see how the questions carry the story along and helps us get inside the head of our main character. It goes like this. Ming was disturbed by the faint sound of a piano coming from the apartment next door. He put down his fork and glanced at the clock, 12:01. Wasn't it a little late for practicing? And wasn't that apartment empty anyway? He'd seen old Mrs. Rogers being carried out on a stretcher just days ago. Wow, that makes his questions very legitimate. Curious, he pressed his ear against the wall. It sounded like classical music played on a reedy-sounding, slightly out-of-tune instrument. Each note twanged and cut itself short at the end as if the piano strings were being clumsily muffled. He'd been over to Mrs. Rogers' place for tea every couple of weeks for years. Surely he would have noticed a piano over there. See, now we're right inside of his head. He didn't notice a piano. He thought he should have. What is going on? Ming put on his jeans, grabbed his key, and exited his apartment. The hallway was dank and silent as usual. A bit of moonlight revealed how many dry leaves had blown in earlier. Ming stood before room 312 and eavesdropped again. To his surprise, he couldn't hear anything. He thought of knocking on the door. But what would he say if someone came out? Oh, sorry, I thought a ghost piano was being played by a ghost piano player? And I love that because that's so normal to what we would think in that situation. Surely it was just a TV or a computer. Why was he being so paranoid? Can you see how those questions do a lot for us, for sentence variety, mixing it up and helping kind of create the question that we're expecting to get answered, and they're a lot of fun. So then, take a moment to write down some questions. Put yourself back in that scene where you did something for the first time. Think about what was going through your head. Why did I get myself in this situation in the first place? How could I not let people know how nervous I am? Am I going to die? If driving for the first time or something like that. What if my guests don't show up to my dinner party? What if I burn the food? Think through your mentality of what was going through your head. And then, like I said, put the whole story together. Use normal sentences, for sure. But then add in your fragments. Add in questions. Really mix it up. And if you do it right, you're going to get a really nice piece of rough draft writing, okay? Which is good because you're going to want it for your rough drafts, because later I'll have you jazz some of these things up and do final draft. This makes a nice one that people often choose. Here is, I'm just going to read you the beginning of this student sample. I thought she did a really nice job getting, here's a feel of what it would be like all put together. Somebody wrote, suffocating. Nice one-word fragment. My helmet, mask, and goggles weighed heavily on my small 7-year-old head. As we slowly rode up the lift, one thought raced through my mind. What if I fall off? I could see it happen in my mind, like falling from a cloud. I would drop onto the jagged rocks below and be left to die, bleeding out like the zebra from the nature documentary. How would I get home? Would I ever see my mom again? Isn't this nice? Fragment, question, and then some of these long fragments, like bleeding out like a zebra. It's just nice. Look at down here. She's got this one where I was forced to begin skiing. My legs felt weak like spaghetti, wobbly, unsure. Nice. Normal sentence. I worried they would give out before the end of the run, forcing me to army crawl to the bottom. What then? How would I be able to go to school in 2 days with useless legs? I pressed forward. Nice short sentence. The wind blew into the space between my goggles and helmet. Frigid. I was sure if I didn't fall off the run into a barely frozen river, I would die of hypothermia. This writer has style. Okay, the personality is showing through. It's very engaging. And it was all done because of the fragments and questions. So give it your best shot, and then, of course, turn it in, and I look forward to reading it. See ya.